Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. My name is Lindsay Clark, and today I'm speaking to you about my experience researching the COVID-19 vaccine options and receiving one of these vaccines. Now, why did I read so much and research so much about these vaccines? Well, shortly before the pandemic began, I was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder called Behçet's disease. To treat this disease, I actually inject a biological medication twice a month, which suppresses my immune system. It's an immunosuppressant medication. Within 1 month of being on this medication, I got shingles, and that was a sign that the medication was working really well and that my immune system was already really suppressed. This is great because it helped treat my autoimmune disorder, but then it's kind of scary because I don't have much of an immune system. So when the pandemic hit the US and then talk of vaccines started, I really began to read and research all these options so that I can make an informed decision when the time came. Now I'm sharing what I have learned with you in hopes that that can kind of clear up some of the common concerns around these vaccines. A quick background on me, I'm actually a medical laboratory scientist. My background is in clinical microbiology, molecular diagnostics, and I have research interest in biosafety as well as interprofessional education and virtual reality training. I do have a master's in public health, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in education. So first, I'd like to talk about exactly what a vaccine is. So let's look at a couple of definitions. So according to the CDC, a vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting that person from that disease. The Oxford Dictionary has a very similar definition, a substance that is put into the body and that protects the body from a disease. So just briefly, I want to talk about how our immune system works. Typically, if we are exposed to a virus or any type of invader or intruder, the first time we're exposed, our immune system kicks into gear and it responds and fights that virus. While this is happening, our immune system is also busy taking notes on how to fight this intruder in case we get exposed again. So if we are exposed again, a second, third, fourth time, our immune system remembers the intruder. It reviews the notes from the first exposure, and it's able to fight this intruder faster and stronger. So the whole idea behind vaccines is that they act as a mild sort of first exposure, which allows our immune system to take notes, form memories of this intruder, and that way, if we're exposed to the real thing, we can fight it faster and stronger. Traditionally, there are four main types of vaccines used in the US. First, there are live attenuated vaccines, which contain a weakened version of the infectious agent. The infectious agent can grow in the individual, but because it has been weakened, it will only cause very mild disease if it causes disease at all. An example of this type of vaccine is the oral polio vaccine. Next, there are inactivated or killed antigen vaccines. In these vaccines, the infectious agent has been killed using some sort of physical or chemical process. An example of this is called the whole cell pertussis vaccine, which is the vaccine for whooping cough. Then there are what are called purified antigen vaccines. These contain just a piece of the infectious agent, which are able to elicit an immune response. The hepatitis B vaccine series is a good example of the purified antigen vaccine. And last, we have toxoid vaccines. These contain a protein-based toxin called a toxoid that has been rendered harmless, but it's still able to stimulate an immune response. An example of this one would be the tetanus toxoid vaccine. Now, let's talk about the COVID vaccines that are currently available in the US. These are new vaccines, and I have new in quotations because they are new types of vaccines, but the research is actually not new. In fact, some of this research dates back to the 1970s. Now, at this time, there are two different types of vaccines available in the US: messenger RNA vaccines and viral vector vaccines. And the way they work is very similar, with the exception of how the instructions are delivered to our immune cells. And we'll talk more about the instructions and how that all works in just a minute. So first, messenger RNA or mRNA vaccines use a lipid nanoparticle to deliver mRNA to our cells. These types of vaccines are manufactured for Pfizer BioNTech, and the Pfizer vaccine is available for individuals ages 16 years old and above, and Moderna is for those age 18 years and above. Both of these require 2 doses to be given, and they are given approximately 3 to 4 weeks apart. Pfizer BioNTech's vaccine has shown to be approximately 95% effective against symptomatic illness, and Moderna's vaccine has actually shown to be around 94% effective. Now, the viral vector vaccine uses a different vehicle to deliver some genetic material or the instructions to our cells. A modified adenovirus is used as the delivery vehicle in this case. And it's important to note here that this adenovirus is actually not a human strain. It does not replicate in humans, and it does not cause infection in humans. So this viral vector vaccine available now is manufactured by Johnson & Johnson Janssen, and it's available for individuals age 18 years and older. This one only requires 1 dose, and it has been shown to be around 66% effective against moderate illness and 85% protective against severe illness. Now, just for comparison, the FDA was originally hoping for vaccines with around 50% effectiveness. So all of these vaccines have far exceeded that so far. So how exactly do these vaccines work? Again, they are very similar, except for how the instructions are delivered. So basically, some messenger RNA or genetic material, which carries instructions for building a specific protein, are delivered to our cells. Now, the mRNA vaccines use a lipid nanoparticle, where the viral vector vaccine uses that modified adenovirus. So if you think about little bubbles, and they've got little special instructions inside for our cells, the bubble for the mRNA vaccine is the lipid nanoparticle. And the bubble for the viral vector vaccine is that modified adenovirus. These kind of float through and they find our cells, and once they do, they deliver the instructions that they're carrying. Now, what do these instructions do? Well, they tell our cells how to build a specific protein called an S protein. This is found normally on the surface of the coronavirus. So you can see in the image, and this is that same image we've all seen for over a year now, that this S protein is actually that little red spike that we see in all these pictures. Now, after our cells build this protein, the S protein or the spike protein, they send it out so our immune system can come into contact with it. When that happens, our immune system recognizes this protein, this little spike, as a foreign invader. And this is essentially our first exposure. And our immune system at this point is learning how to seek and destroy this invader. Then, if we are exposed to the real virus, our body sees that spike protein and knows how to fight it faster and stronger because it's already seen it. And this is how it essentially protects us from serious illness. So I know there are a lot of questions about the vaccine approval process and how the COVID vaccine process is different. Vaccines are considered pharmaceutical products, and thus they are thoroughly tested for safety and efficacy. The normal vaccine approval process begins in a research laboratory where the vaccine is developed and tested. Next, it is tested using animal models, and if it appears to be effective and safe, it will move into clinical trials in humans. Clinical trials have 3 phases, and once the data from all 3 phases is collected and the vaccine is determined to be safe and effective, the manufacturer will apply for FDA approval. After approval is given, the manufacturer will begin to produce and distribute doses of that vaccine. So here's a little more information on the 3 phases of the clinical trials. In phase 1, the vaccine is tested in a small group of around 20 to 100 healthy volunteers. At this point, researchers are looking for safety, efficacy, and serious side effects. If all goes well, they move into phase 2, where the vaccine is given to a larger group of volunteers, usually several hundred. And researchers are looking for any common side effects, as well as how effective and safe the vaccine appears to be. Then, if phase 2 goes well, phase 3 begins. Now these vaccines are being given to a large, diverse group of people. So the goal is to include all different types of people, not just healthy volunteers. So hundreds or thousands of volunteers get the vaccine, and researchers watch for effectiveness, safety, common side effects, and so on. The data is then compiled from all 3 phases and submitted to the FDA. If it is deemed safe and effective, and the benefits are shown to outweigh any risks, it will likely be given FDA approval. So what's different with the COVID vaccines? Well, all 3 COVID vaccines that are currently available in the US have what is called emergency use authorization from the FDA. This is not the same thing as FDA approval. So the FDA has the authority to issue emergency use authorization, or EUA, during public health emergencies. Well, the US was pretty quick to declare a public health emergency soon after coronavirus was first detected here. And with few treatment options, a vaccine is really one of the best tools we have to control the pandemic. So EUA does require all 3 phases of clinical trial safety data, and it must meet strict criteria set forth by the FDA. In addition to being shown to be safe and effective, the benefits of the vaccine must outweigh any risks. Once that EUA is given, monitoring for safety does not stop. And this is an important point. Data will continue to be collected and analyzed to make sure that these vaccines remain safe. So far, vaccines from 3 manufacturers in the US have received EUA: Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, Janssen. Now, earlier I mentioned that the vaccines available in the US were for individuals aged 16 years and older for the Pfizer vaccine, or 18 years and older for Moderna or Johnson & Johnson. Many people are wondering, when can my kids get vaccinated? So here's some information about that. Pfizer BioNTech are currently conducting clinical trials for adolescents ages 12 to 15 years old. Moderna is enrolling adolescents ages 12 to 17 for their clinical trials. Johnson & Johnson, however, was just recently made available for adults. So they have said that they are looking to start clinical trials for adolescents in about 4 to 6 weeks. We don't really know when these will be available for adolescents because it depends on the safety data. But some experts and medical experts are hopeful that these vaccines will be available for these age groups before the 2021 school year begins. So one of the most common questions I hear is, how was the COVID vaccine made available so quickly? Well, in my research and my reading, I found several factors that contributed to this. First, vaccine researchers were not starting from square one. Rather, they were able to use research from previous coronavirus outbreaks like SARS and MERS to really get a jump start. Because this pandemic is global, researchers also sort of put aside their differences and collaborated on a major scale to get these vaccines developed. Next, the US government committed to financially investing in this effort. So a lot of research is sometimes slow due to small amounts of funding. Money can really speed up the research process. Additionally, the US government essentially removed a big risk for vaccine manufacturers. And they did this by investing financially, so the risk of failure was removed. Because of this, Companies were able to begin manufacturing vaccine doses before they had EUA, so that as soon as the EUA was issued, those doses could be distributed. Now, under normal circumstances, companies would likely never do this because if their vaccine ended up not being approved, they could essentially go bankrupt. So when I read about this was kind of an aha moment for me because that kind of made it more clear how these vaccines were available so fast and pretty much immediately after that emergency use authorization was issued. Another question I've heard is, which COVID vaccine is the best? Well, all three of the vaccines that have EUA in the US have been shown to help prevent serious illness from COVID-19 infection. The best vaccine to get is the one you have access to. The goal is to protect as many people as we can, and the vaccine is hands down one of the best ways that we can do that. Now, I've also heard people asking about mixing and matching vaccines. For instance, maybe they get in for a Pfizer vaccine at the last minute, and then 3 weeks later, Pfizer is not available, so now they want to get Moderna for their second dose. At this time, mixing and matching is not advised, as it has not been studied for efficacy and safety. There are trials currently underway in Britain to look at this, but at this time, the US is not really looking into that. Now, here's a couple of the other common concerns out there. There is a lot of concern that COVID vaccines can give you COVID. But remember, these are not live attenuated vaccines, and they do not contain the virus itself. So they will not give you COVID. Remember, it just requires, just has the instructions for that special protein, and it doesn't contain the whole virus, but rather just a little piece of those instructions. Another concern, if you are young and healthy, should you still get vaccinated? Yes. Why? Well, first, young and healthy individuals can and have suffered severe illness as well as long-term complications from COVID infections. And second, you could spread that infection to your loved ones who may not be young and healthy. So getting vaccinated is really the best way to help prevent both of these. What if you already had COVID? Should you still get vaccinated? Yes. Why? Currently, scientists and medical experts are not entirely sure how long immunity will last from the COVID infection. And it seems like it's going to vary from person to person. At this time, it is thought that this immunity lasts about 90 days. Therefore, you should get vaccinated to ensure that you have further immunity. However, you can wait about 90 days after you recover from COVID to get the vaccine. So you've made the decision to get vaccinated. This is excellent. But what can you do now that you're fully vaccinated? Well, the CDC recently released new guidelines for those who are fully vaccinated. You are considered fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your last dose of vaccine. After this, you can gather indoors with other vaccinated individuals without a mask. You can also gather indoors with unvaccinated individuals from one other household without a mask, unless someone in that household is at increased risk. They also recommend that you keep it to one household, so kind of stay within your bubble of people. Also, if you're fully vaccinated, if you are exposed to someone with COVID-19, you are not required to quarantine or be tested unless you develop symptoms of COVID-19. Even after you're fully vaccinated, though, you still need to follow previous guidelines when in public, meaning wear a mask, keep your distance, wash your hands, and avoid large gatherings. And one more thing, one of the most important things you can do after you are vaccinated is contribute to the safety data. So after your first dose or only dose, you can sign up for the CDC's Be Safe After Vaccination Health Checker. This program will send you text messages to check in periodically after your vaccine dose or doses, and you can report any side effects you have through this program as well. And this helps give them more data, and more data is better data. Now I'd like to share a few of my thoughts with you. And just a quick disclaimer, these are my opinions, mine alone, and not necessarily those of my employer, family, friends, or really anybody else. They're all mine. So first of all, I want you to be skeptical of what you see on the internet. News websites, social media, messages from friends and family, headlines, wherever it comes from, make sure to read the article and not just the headline. Why? Because headlines can be misleading. They are meant to grab your attention. Here's a few examples. So this article titled, "Though you might feel sick after your COVID-19 vaccine, the symptoms are not contagious." This implies that you can get sick from the vaccine. And the image they chose to go along with this article shows a lady who looks like she feels terrible. Many individuals who receive the vaccine have little to no side effects. So this headline and the image with it can be kind of scary to those that are not really sure. The next headline, "You can still spread developed COVID-19 after getting a vaccine. What to know?" is, in my opinion, one of the most misleading that I've seen so far. If you open and read this article, you will read that if you were exposed to COVID-19 before you got vaccinated, you may not develop symptoms until after you got vaccinated. If this is the case, you can still spread the virus during that window of time. However, if you have been fully vaccinated, then you're protected. And if you do get COVID, the likelihood you will be symptomatic or seriously ill is dramatically decreased, as is the possibility of spreading it. And the last one, and this one really made me pause because my dad is a cancer patient. He's about to start radiation treatment. Plus, he also has an autoimmune disease. So the headline reads, "Cancer patients less protected by one shot of COVID-19 vaccine, study suggests." When you read this article, though, it states that cancer patients are less protected as compared to healthy individuals. Well, yes, because they are not healthy individuals. And just in general, they are less protected, right? So that can also be a very misleading headline. Don't let these headlines scare you. It might not be what it seems. And I strongly encourage you to open and read those articles. So just to share a little more of my story. After I did all this reading and research, did I get the vaccine? Yes, I did. I actually got both doses of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. After the first dose, my only side effect was a sore arm. And the day after my second dose, I really didn't feel that great, but I think that was mostly due to my autoimmune disease and what I call my normal autoimmune symptoms. And I don't think it was really due to that vaccine. People will ask me sometimes, did my family get vaccinated? Yes, everyone who has been eligible so far in my family has been vaccinated. Did I encourage my mother to get vaccinated? Yes. My mother does not have a medical background like much of my family does. And so I really wanted to make sure also that she was making a very good decision. And once I kind of read and researched all of this, I felt that I could encourage my mother to get this vaccine. For the record, my dad already had the vaccine and didn't really need my input. So why? Why did we all get vaccinated? Well, mostly for protection. Protection for us, protection for you, protection for those who can't be vaccinated. And for me personally, I felt a great deal of personal responsibility to do my part for public health, which is another reason I chose to get vaccinated. So I have included some resources that I found to be very helpful throughout my research and reading on this subject. So this slide has some organizations and agencies that have very helpful websites. And this page includes some social media resources that I refer to frequently, even still. And these are the references that I used to put this presentation together. These are also some really great resources. Again, thank you for listening to my presentation today. I hope that you found it to be useful and informative.